Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Aparutade Sangamata Satavara Ye Sodavanta Vimunjantu Satang. So this afternoon we have this opportunity to reflect on Dhamma the way it is. And I'd like to reflect on Queen Sirikit, the Queen Mother of Thailand, who passed away on the 24th, last Friday, at the age of 93. And she was a very extraordinary woman who did many generous offerings to the Sangha, loved the Dhamma, and who I met personally, I forget how long ago, and I was with Ajahn Sumedho, and we were invited to the palace in Chiang Mai to meet her. And I was very nervous because basically I'm a quite shy person, and then to meet the Queen of Thailand, who's a very important figure of royalty. And in Thailand they have a royal form of Thai which I couldn't speak. And so I was quite nervous. What was I going to say to Queen of Thailand? And so with all my fears and doubts and speculations, she came in the room, and she was an extremely beautiful person. And she got down on the floor and bowed in the proper way that Thais do. And she spoke perfect English, and I carried on one of the most pleasant conversations with her for about half an hour. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. She's a very charming, skilled kind of person who could put you at ease instantly. So all my fears dissipated, and I just enjoyed the opportunity to meet her as another human being. So the passing away of a queen is like this. When we think of her, she's just a legend for many of you. She was the wife of Rama IX. She did many philanthropic works in Thailand, supporting the arts and crafts and helping to educate the hill tribes of Thailand. As a generous, loving woman. And now she's passed away. So that is, she leaves a good memory in my mind, at least. I think being an American, you're kind of against kings, which is a strong slogan these days. But living in Thailand many years, I changed my attitude because I found the king of Thailand and his wife, very skillful leaders of a nation, giving support for the nation of Thais. So many Thais are grieving. This is a shrine to her. And through life, we all have to grieve because life is about change and loss. Where we would like life to be a happy experience and kind of, all that is mine, beloved and pleasing will be mine forever in a happy state is the kind of wish of a child. And as you grow older, you see the loss. I remember the loss of pets when I was a boy, the grief I experienced, the loss of my cat and so forth. So you experience grief even as a child. So when the Buddha pointed to suffering as the first noble truth, because this realm that we want to enjoy through the senses is about loss. It's about death, sickness, old age. And pointing this out while you're still young, while you're still healthy, is important to reflect on it, to realize grief is a part of our human experience in these very mortal forms. When you contemplate your own body, you see how mortal it is. And when you're young, you don't think you're ever, years that will take many years before you die. You've got a whole lifetime ahead of you. But when you're 91, that illusion completely is shattered. And death is very much the future, in the near future. So living this life for almost 60 years as a bhikkhu, you contemplate that. And contemplation isn't just thinking, it's an investigation of the way it is. When people ask about what is meditation, they want a kind of succinct answer and to define it and with techniques of practice. But when you really look at and examine the Four Noble Truths, the teaching the Buddha gave to his 5 friends, 5 disciples after enlightenment, it's about investigation. It's encouragement to investigate life, not to define it or just go along with what you're told. Tell me how to meditate, tell me what's the purpose of life, because you want the answers from somebody else. What is the purpose of life? Ask yourself. What is the purpose of my life? And that's a good question to ask yourself and investigate, not to try to come up with some clever answer. If you believe in God, then you're told that the purpose of your life is to die and live with Jesus forevermore. But that's an answer that is just, it's an illusion that you're getting. You're not getting to understand what the purpose of your life is as a man or woman, as a human being with eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, with a brain. And any answers, no matter how clever or wise they may sound, are just words. And words are conditions, they're phenomena. So can you trust words? So investigation isn't about trying to figure out the purpose of life, but keeping the question, what is the purpose of one's life? And keep it open. It opens up the mind. That question, questioning life, isn't to get clever answers, but to open your conscious experience of life to the way it is, to the silence between the words, to the Dhamma, and then how do you define Dhamma? And so we use words like absolute reality, ultimate truth, but these are, no matter how ultimate and beautiful they may sound, they're just words, and all words are sankharas. So I lose my faith in just definitions with words, the purpose of life, and somebody gives you some clever answer to that question, but it is just words. It's not investigation. It's not looking inward. It's not realizing right now is the purpose of life. Consciousness right now is our true nature, not the body. So I used to wonder as a child if why did God create disabled people? And as a child you hear about, other children being born with blind or with no arms or legs or things like this. And you've got this idea that your father told you that God loves everybody equally. Why didn't he create? Why did he allow disableness to be born? Why didn't he give everybody a perfect form, a beautiful form? If as a child thinking, if I could create everybody, I'd create everybody beautiful. Because I was a very idealistic child. And when I asked my mother, and she said, well, she didn't know what to say, really. It's God's purpose, and so what that really means. And that's thinking and logic. You're trying to logically figure out the purpose, meaning of existence. How did the universe get here in the first place? The sun, moon, and stars. What about dinosaurs and all these different animals that were created long before human beings? Why did God create dinosaurs? They're kind of ugly forms. And so you can go on asking why, wanting to get answers with words, what some prophet says about it, what the Bible says, what the Ajahn say. When you ask the Buddha why, he doesn't ever tell you. But the question word why, W-H-Y, is a very good word to stop the thinking mind. Why am I here? Why do I feel this way? Why do I have anger? Why do I feel jealous or upset by life? Why? What's wrong with me as an ideal? I'm not an ideal. I'm got all kinds of weaknesses. Why? A lot of fear. I have I have a lot of fear about life. I get angry over things. And then as an ideal, you say you should give up anger and fear and just believe in God, which is still not answering the question, why? What does that mean? You must believe in God. And ultimately that means trust in awareness, in Buddhist terms. Trusting in awareness. Ye soda wanta bamun tu satang. Trust in awareness. That's what, and how do you do that? What is awareness? I try to be aware, but my mind goes all over the place, just making up problems and worries and anxiety. I don't know what to trust. But you're aware that your mind is angry, or you're frightened or anxious or worried about something, or wanting to stop the thinking mind. Who wants to stop the thinking mind? So these words, question words, why and who, where, are words to use to stop the thinking mind. For those of you who have been on retreat for the past week, how do I practice when I go home, when I go to the office? And so you ask the Ajahn the question, what do I practice when I'm with my family, when I'm at my workplace? And so then you want the Ajahn to give you an answer that's really going to benefit you. But the answer is in the question, how do I practice when I go home to meet my family? How? And that's another word to investigate reality here and now. How? How do I practice mindfulness, awareness, when I'm at the office where there's a lot of confusion and jealousy and fear? How do I practice? And you don't need an answer, just be the witness to that lack of to the silence after you ask the question. That's investigating, witnessing the way it is, rather than trying to get answers, verbal answers from, or literary answers from scriptures, from philosophers, from psychologists. So I use this a lot in my years of practice, just asking myself, who's doing this? Who wants to get enlightened? And then that stops the thinking mind, at least it does with me. Who wants to get enlightened? And then I say, Ajahn Sumedho, I know that already. So it's not the kind of mundane answer to the question, but to the reality of a question stops the thinking mind, because you start searching for an answer, but don't search for an answer, just stop with who wants to get enlightened. And there's silence. So you say, well, I want to get enlightened. And everybody knows that. You know it before you ask the question. So the question is merely a way of investigating, watching, observing what comes and goes, what changes. Like the ego, the sense of a separate self. I am this body. I am Ajahn Sumedho. I am a Buddhist monk. And these things are titles were given, names were given. We don't, you're given your name, your original name that your mother and father gave you, or your Pali name. They're a given thing. You didn't choose them. You weren't born with the name. So don't trust anything that you were given. Culture, religion, education, beliefs of all sorts, all sankharas, all conditions are impermanent. The wisdom teaching, that's for investigation. It's not a belief. It's not. The Buddha expected us to believe that. Sape sankhara anicca, all conditions are impermanent. So it's not Buddhist doctrine, but it is a statement that encourages investigation. Is there a permanent sankhara? Is a question. And then the loyal Buddhist mind says, well, Buddha said they're all impermanent, so they must be. Because we believe in Buddha, so I just believe all sankharas are, but that's not the point. Not to just be a Buddhist, but it's a wisdom statement, not to be grasped, but to encourage. Maybe there are permanent sankharas. because I read all sankaras are impermanent, so I read that from a holy book. And so you believe that, but that's not the point of investigation. It's not believing that that's true. It's a statement to encourage you to investigate thoughts, memories, emotions, physical conditions, the body, its senses. And sape sankhara anicca, sape dhamma anatta. So dhamma, sape dhammas, all dhammas are not a person. Like there is the Dhamma, which is ultimate reality, but ultimate reality is another two words, so that's the best you can do with English superlatives. But other than that, is that true? Separate selves. We see ourselves as separate. So we're Dhammas, and they like to compare the Dhammas as like waves on a pond or in the ocean. They're the same thing as water, but they come and go. So when we think of ourselves as just waves on a pond or a sea or an ocean, suddenly, because waves are definitely impermanent, but there's still as much of the water as the whole ocean is. They don't change. So consciousness, these conscious forms that are sitting here in this temple are like waves on the sea. They're like, but we take, I'm not just an ordinary wave, I'm a special wave. I'm a separate wave. I'm a different wave from you. But for us who look upon the pond and its waves, it's all just water. Just like Dhamma is ultimate reality, the waves are just the Dhammas that arise. So they're called Dhammas. Kusala Dhamma, Piyakata Dhamma. So there's good waves and bad waves and tsunami waves and ripples and things like that. So they don't have exactly the same qualities all the time. But what is definitely reality is that they're part of the sea, part of the pond. They come from that. So see, consciousness is universal, not personal. So that changes one's attitude towards life. When we see everything personally, it's, we feel separate. We like this person, we don't like that person. We agree with some, we disagree with others. We form prejudices, opinions and views, and the thinking mind goes on and on and on, discriminating, judging, comparing about waves on a pond, ripples on the pond, is what the emptiness of life is really when you examine it. It's just nothing more than different dhammas arising and ceasing. So when you identify with these separateness, these separate waves, then there's no purpose to life because they're not going to last. Waves don't last very long. But when your refuge is in Dhamma, and this is like consciousness, then the ripples and tsunamis and hurricanes and all the different forms of water that can change and arise, cease according to conditions, are no longer our identity. We realize our true nature, which is the deathless reality of Dhamma, apparent here and now and timeless. Timelessness is a really good thing to question. Try to figure out timeless with your thinking mind. Because the thinking mind is about time. So you're trying to imagine something that is not in time, and all you get up is a word like timeless. You can't really imagine timelessness with your intellect. Just try. This is investigation. Try to imagine timeless. Well, we have the word eternity, immortal, but they're just more words. You can't imagine timelessness, akalika Dhamma, because words are time-bound. So it's like trying to realize God or Dhamma or consciousness with something that is time-bound and impermanent. It doesn't work. You can't do it. This is investigation. So then I say, you're perfect. Everyone here is already enlightened, perfect arahants. And then, how does that affect you? When I say everyone here is pure consciousness, your true nature is pure, deathless, Dhamma, consciousness. And then your thinking mind says, well, I have all kinds of faults and fears, and because we unless you're really narcissistic, you don't think of yourself as perfect. You think of yourself as there's something wrong or not quite right, or you come to meditation retreats to solve your problems and to find out what's wrong with you or discover your real self. That is motivating people to meditate. That's all it can do. But until you investigate and find out for yourself, you can spend the rest of your life trying to figure out the purpose of life, or meditating without investigating, just trying to seek perfection as some ideal that you've got to get. So when I ask myself, are you perfect? Ajahn Sumedho, are you perfect? But then in terms of I think, no, Ajahn Sumedho is not perfect. I knew that already before I asked the question. But if there's no Ajahn Sumedho, am I really Ajahn Sumedho as my ultimate reality and purpose in life? So it's convention, nothing wrong with it. It's a nice name, so it's conventional reality. So the conventional reality is like language, religious customs, traditions, education, intellectual conditions, reason, logic are conventions, not ultimate reality. But when you investigate, am I enlightened or am I not enlightened? Both say, am I not enlightened? Then the mind goes empty. Am I enlightened? The mind that gets a reaction. My personality comes forth and says, no, you've got a lot of things wrong with you. But then my personality says one thing, but am I not enlightened? And then, then the intellectual says, no, you would be arrogant to assume you are. That's what my personality does. It's like that. So am I enlightened? It says one thing. Am I not enlightened? I don't know. As a person, as a convention, I don't know. But as awareness, conscious awareness is enlightenment. When you realize that you're the ocean, not the wave. You're the universal conscious reality of Dhamma, rather than the mortal forms that move and change and get born, get old, get sick, and die. So I want to emphasize, it's like looking for yourself. Where is consciousness? Then there's eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness. But these are all subject to change. You can go blind. You can become deaf. Lose your sense of smell, you lose your sense of taste. You get old, you get dementia, you get Alzheimer's, lose your memory, your intellect. So anything you gain, you lose, but what you can't lose is conscious awareness. Consciousness itself is Dhamma, ultimate reality. So that doesn't change. That's not something that is impermanent and personal. Pure consciousness, a sense of separateness, a separate self falls away. And what's left is conscious awareness. You can see it as love, unconditioned love, as bliss, as happiness, whatever words you want to use, they're all positive because Dhamma is perfect. Nothing wrong with it. It doesn't change. It's apparent here and now and timeless. Ehipasiko, come and see. Come and realize this for yourself. So the Buddha Dhamma is like an invitation to investigate life rather than trying to convert you to Buddhism or tell you what you should do or believe. So it's like a liberating teaching to give you the encouragement to experiment, to find out for yourself. So it's like a real freedom to know this, that there's nothing wrong, nothing to fear. So it's liberation or freedom from the limitations of being just a ripple or a tsunami on the great ocean that's going to rise and cease and change and be harmless or very destructive. Right now in Jamaica and Cuba, the terrible hurricane, Melissa. Beautiful name for a terrible event. So these Caribbean islands, which are oftentimes seen in very romantic images of palm trees and sandy shores and warm weather, can become nightmares because they're mortal and changeable. So it's not just ripples that's affecting Jamaica right now. It's one of the worst hurricanes they've ever witnessed. So hurricanes are imperfect. They're dhammas. They arise and cease according to conditions. But they are just water, whether they take the form of a ripple on the pond or a hurricane in the Caribbean. So I offer this as a reflection for this afternoon.